Chapter 1. Movement Exercises and Tips. Introduction to movement. To live is to breathe, to stretch, to move. To prance across wide open spaces. To gesture with fingers, hands, or arms. To spin dizzily on grassy green places. Movement is joy. Or movement shows sorrow. Movement is how we express. On stage, it shows more than our lines or our faces, much more than our stature or dress. As discussed in the movement intro above, this is one of the most freeing and potentially relaxing categories of drama lessons. Warm-ups can include anything from statues to Simon Says, to some form of follow-the-leader parade, preferably to a type of marching music. Even for Group 3, these can often work well. Warm-up number 1. Statues. For many other categories, such as improv and characterization exercises, statues can also work well with some adjustments to the relevant section. Choose a buyer who goes out of the room. Take each of the remaining students firmly by the arm and swing them around and around until they are dizzy. Then fling them, not hard, lawsuits are always pending, into a position. They must stop and hold this position. The buyer then enters, and you show them each of the statues, pressing a button or pulling a cord on each to get them activated. Each statue must then do a performance in movement for the buyer based on their original held position, and after several moments going back into their original held position. After the buyer has seen each, he or she may choose a statue to buy. You can leave this last bit out if you don't wish to make it a win-lose competition type of exercise, of course. Warm-up number 2. Another warm-up common for movement lessons is to have everyone move around the room separately from each other and call out changes like, "You're now walking in a room full of plastic balls." "You're now on a sheet of ice." "You have diarrhea and are about to lose control of your bowels." "The room is a frozen meat locker, and you've been in here for an hour." "The odor in this room is noxious and disgusting." "You have a helium balloon between your knees." "This room is in the tropics, hot and humid, and you're trying to move through a jungle of vines and poisonous snakes." "The people next to you are all carrying concealed weapons like guns and knives. You are walking across a very muddy field to the other side. You are in the desert after 4 hours of being lost. Rather than suggest they crawl here, it is interesting to watch and see how many do it of their own accord. Exercises. Group 1. Waving the caterpillar and more. An excellent movement exercise for Group 1 is to have a series of a great variety of short music excerpts, about 15 seconds each, ready to play. Turn off the lights, makes them feel less self-conscious, and have them begin first by lying on the floor. They must dance on the floor to the various tunes. Then have them stand and do the same. Encourage them not to copy each other, but to do their own. Then you pick groups of 3 or 4. Never a good idea to have pairs in any exercise if you can help it, and always best if you pick the groups. Thus, no one feels left out, and the students are always working with different people, not always their best friends. And have the groups hold hands, link arms, or connect however they like, and once again, dance in rhythm to the tunes. Lastly, the whole class should somehow link together physically and become a machine. This could be everyone moving the same way at the same time, or all different movements and go along like a caterpillar, or the wave. If your group seems to excel at this exercise, it may be possible to introduce the movement exercises for Group 2 and 3 as well, with perhaps more simplified adjustments. Group 2. This exercise and the Group 3 one could be used interchangeably, as both require a certain amount of maturity and self-confidence. Dance, drama sticks. I have found that bamboo sticks from the garden center, of lengths about 3 feet long, are best for this exercise, although I have also used half-inch dowels of the same length. The latter tend to be a little too heavy, however, and certainly more expensive. Put the group in pairs, one of the few exercises where pairs and not a larger group are a necessity, of similar heights. This will not work well if one child is considerably taller than the other. Play music of a longer variety than the above excerpts, but not whole songs either, about 45 seconds each with a good variety of speeds and rhythms. Each student will place their first finger only on the end of the stick or pole. They must carefully watch each other's eyes and follow the movement of the stick up and down as one moves high, low, around, etc. When they get really good, they can try stepping over it, going under it, spinning it on their finger end, but never grasping it with one hand. If you wish to make a competition out of it, see how many daring moves the pairs can make in time to the music without dropping the stick, or count the amount of time each pair drops it and award the team with the least drops, who is still most matching the rhythm. If you wish, you may then have them switch pairs. Group 3. 3 poses. If this exercise is taken seriously, it's one of my favorites, both to execute and to teach. Have a piece of primarily instrumental music chosen with a dramatic beginning and ending of about 2 minutes in length, if you have a very big room, or 1 minute if only a medium-sized space. To be perfect, the music should have some crescendos, diminuendos, and a change in rhythm or speed, but this is tricky to find all in a 2-minute interval. What I've done is to have 3 different pieces, and I choose one, depending on the size of the room. One is 1 minute, another is 1.5 seconds, and the final excerpt is 2 minutes, edited by a professional so that each of them sounds like they are all one unified piece within itself, but with the required beginnings, endings, and shifts of tempo and decibel level, etc. in each. Some good examples to look for or download are movie or musical overtures. Work well as they have already amalgamated several tunes in one. Instrumental refrains from Stealing Home movie with Judy Foster and Mark Harmon. Carnival of the Animal or Boston Pops type recordings. Peter and the Wolf. Supertramp. Certain songs from this group have wonderful dramatic excerpts either in the middle or at the end that work beautifully. First, have the group spread out all around the room using every possible corner. They should not be within an arm's length of anyone else. Next, instruct them to pose. Any dramatic pose will do, either upright, sitting, or on the floor. Remind them to always be original, no copying others. They must remember exactly where they were for this pose and remember the exact pose. No changing will be allowed. Then, tell them to go all the way to the other side of the room and strike another pose. It should be obviously very different and at a different level from the pose prior. Lastly, tell them to go as far away from this last pose as they can get and to strike and remember their last and final pose. Reiterate that they must remember where all 3 poses were and what each one looked like. Then have them all come back and sit them on the floor to listen to the music. This will be their only chance to carefully examine the swells and tempo and overall timing, so they must listen carefully. But don't fully explain the exercise until after they've listened, which makes it more free-flowing and less planned. Once they've listened to the edited excerpt, explain that, 1, you will turn off the lights to make the room comfortable and make them feel less self-conscious. If it's a windowless room, crack open a doorway to a lit hallway or wherever, or have a small lamp for your own use. Obviously, the room can't be pitch black. 2, they will get in position 1, the music will start, and they should hold the pose for as long as they feel is right. No moving just because others are. 3, when they feel the moment is right based on their pose, their own sense of rhythm and timing, and the music itself, they should move across the room toward position 2, in time to the music, and with whatever flares, gestures, etc. it will take to help them ease naturally from first pose to second. 4. They get into and hold position 2, and then follow the same instructions to position 3, but should be arriving and posing here just as the music is about to end, i.e., they will either get in this position exactly as the music ends or should only be holding it for a matter of seconds before it finishes. No walking or running normally. Only movement with the music is allowed. Though it does not have to be dance-like movement per se. I've seen some very slapstick boys skip a pretend rope across the floor once across, then hop like a bunny in the next cross. No rushing at the end like one would do for musical chairs, and they must be in the same spot for their same pose all 3 times. If this exercise looked sloppy and not at all what you were hoping for, then obviously you should allow them to redo it. But the group that can, for the most part, pull this off the very first time is indeed a most talented bunch. Tips for the teacher. Just in case time is not a constraint, these are some tips to either teach to the class as a short theory lesson or are points you should at least be watching for when coaching any of the following exercises in this book or helping to block a scene. Negative points to watch out for. Be aware if a student is covering their face with their hands or a prop like a book. This will garble or muffle the sound and prevent facial expression from being seen. If a line being delivered is extremely important, forwards the plot, adds to conflict, or is very funny, the actor should not move or cross on it. Unless it's in the character of the role being played, a student should not cross knees or feet, awkward, and does not help voice projection. Unless it's in the character of the role being portrayed, an actor should never grab the arms of a chair to push themselves up. Do not upstage another actor, as upstage is the section furthest from the audience. See glossary, so called because historically the stage sloped from low to high for audience viewing, as opposed to now when the audience slopes or rises. So any student who stands further back to deliver lines and then stays there while others turn to face him or her, thus putting their backs to the audience, is upstaging. Throughout this book, several comments are made about young people who figuratively upstage others by demanding attention and spotlight time. This is more about literally upstaging others, often unintentionally. However, you can see where the phrase has come from. Likewise, and this should go without saying, make sure a student is never masking, standing in front of another, so that the audience cannot clearly see or hear that person. Positive points to suggest. Students downstage moving up should move forward when about to make a stage cross with the upstage foot first. This is best for balance and doesn't look awkward to the audience. When an entrance is being made, the upstage foot should come first so that the body is turned downstage toward the audience. Always have students feel the edge of a chair or sofa with the back half of their leg before sitting, and don't let them double in half to sit or restand. The upper body should be upright at all times. When kneeling or stooping, the same should be considered. The student should keep the upper body upright as much as possible. Audience can't see face if bent over, and also it appears awkward, even if it's really more awkward not to bend forward. Always have actors cross upstage of seated characters so as not to walk in front of them. When only 2 students are on stage at a time and one actor makes a cross movement clear across the stage, the other actor should counter-cross, with some sort of reason, purpose called motivation, to offset the movement, better balance the stage distribution, and to avoid being blocked or upstaged by the other's new position. It is fine, however, to cross downstage of furniture or characters who are standing. A rule of thumb is to have students learn to open doors using the hand nearest to the hinges, and to close it with the other hand. And, one of my personal favorites on which to harp, always make sure students make gestures with their upstage arm or hand, see section on slapping, so that their face is never covered or their words muffled. Lastly, do make sure actors stay in character when making an exit until they are well out of sight of the audience. Young people especially are often so thrilled to have pulled off their lines or movement in a scene, they will practically do a victory dance before they are even off the stage. Tips for the teacher. If possible, have children always dress in tights or snug-fitting sweats, both top and bottom. Serious drama students will generally wear black, as exercises and sitting in theater circles are often done on the floor or stage proper, and it's good practice for any work back or off stage or just out of the spotlight. They will not be seen if they aren't supposed to be. It is also a wonderful neutral color for onstage ensemble work where no one in particular is supposed to stand out. See comments on upstaging. For chapters such as this one, in movement and also physical conflict and chorus line steps, the tights, at least on the bottom, are imperative. Another tip to teach right away, and thus perfect for the movement component, is that while much of your exercises are hopefully done in a large room on a large floor, if the student can get a chance to feel the stage, it is something of an awesome procedure. Have them, only in 3 at a time or so, run around the stage with arms outstretched, then have them twirl around and around in the space, and lastly, to walk with eyes shut, or blindfolded so they've taken comfortable ownership of this space. Stand below the stage at the very front of it, below the apron, and ensure that no one will dizzily spin right off. Other students can help you by doing this also. Often small stages must use space right up to the edge, where flaming footlights would have once made it an obvious boundary. So in modern times, young people must experiment with as much quick movement as possible while always being very aware of how close they are to taking a tumble.